So let's let us discuss the haul. And where did we shop this time? I don't actually have a business card. I like to get business cards of the hobby stores that I go to, so I can, you know, kind of display something when I talk about it. But Bacon knows what I'm talking about. We went to Panda Hobby. This is actually their little winter flyer gift guide. That's their logo right there. And they actually provide stickers, which I feel like I have their stickers somewhere. I could at least show those off. Hold on a sec. Let's see if I can find them real quick. Stickers? Panda Hobby stickers? I might not have them handy at the moment, but that's okay. Yeah, so I was out of town, which is to say out of my town, and back in the big old city, and went to Panda Hobby. That's the logo right there, as I said. This is their winter gift guide. We might be able to take a look at it real quick. This is just sort of like showing off their catalog of items that they have, including Gunpla, blah blah blah, action figures, Ultraman, Mecha Girls, Mecha Musume, Gunpla of course, non-Gunpla models, Star Wars, so on and so forth. Very nice store. That was my first time going to that store, and it was really nicely organized. And again, I don't really need to tell Bacon this, but for anyone else, like, they have this really, when you enter the store, they have this fairly open area with a lot of display cabinets showing off their miniatures. Their Gunpla and other stuff, models, and it's just really nice presentation because you enter the store and you're not sort of like suddenly bombarded with that overwhelming amount of stuff that you really don't even know what that stuff does. You know, like any big hobbyist store, usually you enter and it's like just wall to wall miniatures and models, a bunch of tools, and it can be kind of overwhelming. But here at the Panda Hobby, you kind of go in and yeah, it's this little open area, and you can kind of look at a number of cabinets to see the models that they have, and then you kind of progress through the store more, and you can see all of that stuff that I just mentioned, all the overwhelming stuff that they have. And they really do have an overwhelming amount of Gunpla in particular. It's like from an entire wall is dedicated all to Gunpla, including all the grades. You know, they've got all the high grade, master grade, and beyond, and then they've got entry grade, and then they've got the they even have some P Bandai exclusive stuff. You know, otherwise you'd have to buy P Bandai stuff from the store, from actual P Bandai. However, that service is not available in Canada, as far as I know. So it is a good store. I liked it. We can talk a little bit more about the details of it, but let's actually get on with the stuff that I bought. Let's talk about this first. Mr. Mark Softer. So this is something that you use for decals, and I've been playing around with decals with my Eldar models. You can see here, this one here I've been talking about in previous videos and stuff about that I wasn't 100% happy with how it's so glossy, right? And this thing here, Mark Softer, isn't really going to impact that aspect. It's not really going to address the glossiness of this at all. But I bought this anyways because I thought it might be useful for curved surfaces and contours, and if there's any sort of like panel lining, like molded in panel lining on the model, this can kind of help. This can kind of help the decal kind of conform to the contours of the model better. That's my understanding of what Mr. Mark Softer does. The other product, Mr. Mark Setter, is something that you can use to help adhere the decal to your model. But in my opinion, I didn't think I was going to need that all too much, just because I was going to go in and use some kind of matte varnish or top coat to do the same effect, right? And on the subject of a matte varnish or a top coat, that's the other thing I bought right here. Whoop. Mr. Super Clear. Is this from the same manufacturer? Oh yeah, Mr. Hobby. So these are from both the same company, Mr. Hobby UV Cut, Mr. Super Clear Flat. And my hope is that with this and other models, the issue that I was talking about, this glossiness, as you can see here, I can kind of knock that down and make it a little bit more matte if I use something like this, Mr. Super Clear UV Cut Flat, basically a top coat. And again, you can see it here, it's kind of glossy. And if you take a look at this one, here's an example of it looks much less glossy. Why is that? Well, I did talk about this in a previous video, but to go over it shortly, I used essentially a matte medium paint, kind of like the binding agent that you find in paint, but just without any color. And I applied it to this, and it kind of dulled it down, but it also made the clear parts around the decal a little cloudy. So I kind of had to go back and take some paint and kind of sort of match what I had already done underneath the decal to on top of the decal around the actual design. I know that sounds a little weird, but to look at this up close, it does look a little like someone was trying to fix a mistake, and that's exactly what I was doing. So I'm hoping that this should do the job, or any other matte varnish, because I do have a bottle of matte varnish. It's not like hobby. It's not a hobby supply material. It's something that I got at not a hardware store. I got it at Walmart, actually. It's intended for cars, I think, and it's essentially the same purpose. So I'm going to try maybe one model with that, and then another model with this, and then we can kind of compare and see. Or maybe I'll use this model, something like this, and I'll test out the car one on this, because this model also has a weird glossiness to it, which I'm not crazy about. You guys might not be able to tell, but yeah, there's a bit of a glossy effect on this guy, which I don't love, and kind of want to address that. The other thing here it mentions is that it's UV cut. Bacon recommended this product here because this one will help defend your model, protect your model from the yellowing that can happen, right? Especially if you're not painting your models. That would be a bigger concern. When you paint your models, that's the paint coating is sort of acting as a layer of protection from the actual plastic of the model, such that it won't get yellow. So you're not really gonna have that problem, right? But in the case of Gunpla, many people, and myself included, some of these models that I have, I'll be painting, and others I won't. This one here is a model that I'll talk about more, but right here, this is a SD Gundam, Super Deformed Gundam, and I'm not really planning on painting this, and it's white. So this is a prime candidate for something like this, the UV Cut Mr. Super Clear. It'll help block the UV rays from yellowing the plastic. Now the reason why this happens is because the plastic, if I'm not mistaken, is it's either ABS or PS, polystyrene. So Lego blocks and all Lego parts are made from ABS plastic, and the reason why, in particular, the white plastic starts to yellow is because there's like this flame retardant chemical that they put in the plastic to resist getting lit on fire. It helps them not get toasted and burned, right? And that chemical or whatever also has the side effect of yellowing over time, or not even over time. It's actually it's UV rays. Although that being said, I've heard stories of people who store their Lego in boxes so away from sunlight, and they take them out and then they're yellowed. So it can happen in different ways, but yeah, a lot of, or some Bandai model kits, Gunpla kits, Plamo kits are made from ABS, the very same stuff as Lego. They presumably they have the same kind of fire retardant agent, and thus can yellow, especially the white. Blue, it can happen to blue. I've noticed it with blue and red as well, because I have in the past collected like old Lego sets, and I've just noticed that about old Lego sets is that they, not just the white but the other colors too, tend to yellow. But yeah, so this will help. It's a long-winded way of saying that this is going to help, hopefully, maybe. So what else did we have? What else did I pick up? Milliput. So for those that come from the Warhammer hobby, from the Warhammer side of making models and stuff, they're probably familiar with this stuff. It's called green stuff. You wouldn't tell from looking at it here because it's blue and yellow, but the purpose is, here's actually the packaging. Games Workshop, green stuff, modeling putty. Is there any instructions back here? Or anything about the chemical makeup of this? Let me see. This is very old, by the way. Contains epoxy constituents irritating to the eyes and skin, may cause sensitization by skin contact. Okay. Well, it's a two-part epoxy, and what you do is you take the blue and the yellow and you mix it up, and it turns into like this solid green. Once it becomes that solid green, then you can kind of work with it. Many sculptors from the 80s and even before that, and even now, work with this stuff to make the Warhammer models that we all know and love today. However, in recent years, well, not in recent years, but within the last maybe 10 years or so, we've been getting into like digital sculpting. So this stuff has been more used with smaller manufacturers or modelers customizing their models, right? And it does its job, but I would say it's very difficult to work with, because the consistency is something like working with really nearly stale bubblegum. Once you turn it into that green stuff, it becomes like this hard, rubbery texture to work with. It feels very unintuitive, and even when it fully cures, it kind of still has a bit of that rubbery texture, that hard rubber texture. So it just is really hard to work with. And on top of that, in the best cases, if you're sort of like a noob like I am, or intermediate, it's hard to work with. But on top of that, this batch here is probably more than 10 years old, 10 to 12, 15 years old. So it's actually even harder to work with. I did get it to work, sort of customizing some bits and pieces, but it's tough to work with. So I was like, it's time to get something new, and I have heard a lot of great things about Milliput. So Milliput is also used for sculpting miniatures and big sculptures too. If you look on here, it says uses: model making, sculpting, boat repairs, car body repairs, temporary repairs for car petrol tanks, batteries, radiators, exhaust, DIY plumbing, and household repairs. So it's quite versatile, actually. But for the purposes of making miniatures and even just filling in gaps, like this is what I use this stuff for quite a lot, is just to fill in gaps and, you know, do some quick texture work on models. Milliput is supposed to be even better for all that, because from what I've seen, it just seems like a much more versatile, it seems like a much more... hold on a second, guys. Yeah, just in general, much more versatile and maybe more intuitive product to use. It seems like it's just, again, well, let's open it up. Let's open it up real quick. So as you can see, it's actually a two-part epoxy as well. This is like a darker beige gray, and this is a more lighter beige gray. And so you're going to mix them up as well. You just take these two parts and you're gonna mix them up. It looks like a dynamite or something. But yeah, that's all it is. But the actual workability, pliability of this stuff is something more like clay, like oil-based clay, which I'm used to, or air drying clay, stuff like that. I'm a little more used to working with that stuff, and this seems to be more along the lines of that. Let's read this here. Milliput is a versatile epoxy putty which is highly adhesive to most materials. Milliput can be sculpted and once cured can be machined, drilled, tapped, turned, filed, sawn, sandpapered, and painted. So all of that is just right up my alley. This is what I'm looking for. And I was watching a video actually of someone working with this stuff, and he was saying that the secret to this stuff is that you can mix some and then add some isopropyl alcohol, just, you know, like your 75% alcohol. Maybe you have it in your medicine cabinet or using it as a disinfectant. And you can sort of apply it to surfaces where you've put this already and just kind of brush it on, and it'll help to kind of melt and smooth out the gaps, so it just looks really nice like a single part. And you can even like put some of this stuff into a dish and then mix it with a lot more isopropyl alcohol such that it becomes kind of like a more milky paste, and then that can be used to kind of like add textures or yeah, just as like filling in really thin gaps and stuff. It just seems a whole lot more versatile and a lot easier to use compared to this stuff. That's my understanding. I haven't used any yet, I just bought this, but yeah, I'm looking forward to trying out this stuff. I remember when I initially bought like my first batch of green stuff. This isn't it, like, you know, this is like many years ago, but when I first bought my initial batch of green stuff, I was thinking I was gonna make sculptures. I was gonna make amazing sculptures, you know, like the people in White Dwarf magazine, like the guys in Wizard and at Heavy Metal and the Citadel miniature sculptors were doing. And then just working with it, it was like the most deflating experience, just because this stuff is so hard and so awkward to work with. And even to this day, having used it for several years, and I feel like I'm a little better at using it, it's still just really awkward. So I'm hoping we'll have better results with this. So that concludes the tool segment of all the things that I picked up.